I think it's fair to say that the Spider Noir series on Prime Video has been a massive hit so far. I never thought I'd live to see the day where Nic Cage actually reprised his role as the Spider from Into the Spiderverse. I know technically they're two different characters, as the TV version of Spider Noir isn't even Peter Parker technically. However, regardless of what version of Spider-Man we're talking about, what good is a hero without a good rogues gallery? And it just so happens that Spider-Man has one of the most stacked and iconic in the business. We get to see quite a few of them in the live-action series, though not to spoil anything, they don't quite always occupy the roles we expect them to occupy. Hence, in today's video, we're going to be exploring every single villain that the Spider from Marvel's Earth 90214 and the live-action series has ever encountered, in detail. By the end of this video, I guarantee you'll know everything there is to know about these villains, and then some. So, without further ado, get those web shooters ready, and let's get into it.
So, I'm convinced, but I'm not sick.
Silverman, Brendan Gleeson. It's no secret at this point that Spider Noir is taking quite a few creative liberties with its characters. One of the most obvious is the Magia crime lord Silverman, played by the actor Brendan Gleeson. To be honest, we were kind of expecting to see Norman Osborne, simply known as the Goblin in Marvel Noir, to be the villain. However, his role, at least for this first season, seems to have been taken by Gleeson's character Silverman. When we say that Osborne's role was taken, we mean it quite literally, because in the Noir universe, Osborne is the crime lord of NYC who controls the criminal underbelly. The show, however, has replaced him with Silverman, who in other continuities is actually a Sicilian mob boss called Silvio Manfredi, who's constantly hunting for immortality. However, in this show, Silverman is definitely not a Sicilian, especially not with that accent. His real name is Finbar Byrne, an Irish mob boss who wants to use the power of these new superpowered individuals for his own ends. The show paints him as this classic, ruthless, manipulative noir gangster who's taken over the city following the Spider's disappearance 5 years prior to the events of the show. Fun fact, in the comics, Silverman eventually transforms into a cyborg in his attempts to gain eternal life.
Opium.
Sandman / Flint Marko. Jack Houston. One of the most classic Spider-Man villains, no matter which universe or medium, has to be Flint Marko, aka the Sandman. And let me tell you, we love the way that they've portrayed this character for the Spider Noir TV series. Traditionally, Marko is often portrayed as a conflicted and tragic human whose destiny leads him towards a life of crime. In our opinion, this aspect of his character has always played off nicely with his powers, which essentially make him a sand monster because of the simple fact that this contrast humanizes him. Things are no different in this show, as once again, Flint is shown as the bodyguard and an enforcer working under the wings of Silverman. Despite having superpowers, the only reason he allows himself to be bossed around is because of his loyalty towards the mob boss and his love for a lounge singer called Cat Hardy, who is apparently sort of Silverman's mistress. Just like the other superpowered characters in this show, the Sandman was part of a Nazi experiment camp where he and his fellow soldiers were put through all manner of inhumane experiments to create super soldiers. Well, Ben Reilly, aka Spider Noir's powers manifest almost immediately. Flint and company's abilities only begin showing up nearly 5 or more years after they escape their ordeal. The way that the TV series portrays Flint as more of an afflicted human whose body is crumbling into sand instead of an individual whose powers are simply a gimmick really added depth to his character. It also adds an element of body horror to the entire thing, further layering the sense of dread and tragedy in the audience's mind. Jack Houston does a stellar job playing this thug with a conflicted but golden heart for whom powers are definitely a curse. Tombstone / Lonnie Lincoln, Abraham Popula. Just like Flint Marko, Lonnie Lincoln is another survivor from the Nazi experiment camp in France who was rescued by Nic Cage's character. We didn't mention earlier what exactly happened in the camp, so let's elaborate for a second. The Nazis conducted inhumane experiments with these prisoners of war by injecting them with radioactive particles and minerals and the genetic materials of spiders, scorpions, snakes, and eels, just to name a few. The nutjobs then proceeded to alter the victims' genes by splicing their DNA with that of other entities, which led to their genetic material decaying, often causing secondary lethal mutations. The sad thing is, almost every one of these guys ended up dead. In the series, we learn that Tombstone's powers began to manifest after he visits Dr. Faber, a fellow POW who's trying to find a cure. Instead, her meddling only accelerated the process and led to Tombstone and the others gaining powers. Following this, due to the obvious changes that this had on his appearance, it led to him being ostracized and considered a freak. Eventually, Lonnie is brought before Silverman by Flint Marko, who offers him food and shelter, and more importantly, treats him like a human being, even if it's all pretend, which leads to him joining the gang. In the original comics, Tombstone is an African-American gangster with albinism, possessing an insane amount of strength, who later gains superpowers after he's trapped in an Oscorp test chamber. This Tombstone is an out-and-out villain with no redeeming qualities. He's a stone-cold killer, unlike his counterpart from the Spider Noir TV show, but we think it's important to note that the Tombstone in the TV show seems to be a hybrid of some sort of crustacean, considering the fact that his skin has an exoskeleton. Outside of that, we feel that the Spider Noir Tombstone is another down-on-his-luck good fellow who just happens to be jaded with society, making him easy to manipulate to committing crimes. Megawatt / Dirk Leaden, Andrew Lewis Caldwell. I know you're probably thinking every villain in this series so far, outside of Silverman, seems to be a good guy with really bad luck. However, that all changes with the introduction of Andrew Lewis Caldwell's character, Dirk Leaden, aka Megawatt. For those familiar with the Spider-Man villain Electro, this is basically the noir version of him. I probably don't need to tell you that this character has been altered for the show once again, just like the others we've discussed so far. Unlike his compatriots, Flint and Lonnie, who went through hell alongside him in Nazi-occupied Germany, Dirk is a certified psycho. The thing with the powers these guys have is that the more they use their abilities, the more they become unstable, and it's heavily hinted that this will eventually lead to their deaths. We like how the series establishes a cost for such great powers, which is also what sets the Spider apart from them, because his powers are different, and his condition is stable. Megawatt is broken out of prison by Tombstone and the Sandman, and recruited by Silverman to his growing group of superpowered henchmen. Unlike his comic book counterpart, Megawatt has a penchant for theatrics and is constantly rattling off prose and poetry, which even we found annoying after a while. Megawatt has the power to control and generate electricity, which makes sense since he was created after having his DNA spliced with that of an electric eel. It's never explicitly stated that this was the case, but having explained how they got their powers, and Noir saying that one of the creatures was an eel, we don't think you need a genius-level intellect to put two and two together. Unlike Sandman and Tombstone, Megawatt doesn't view his powers as a curse and seems to willfully ignore the dangers of overusing them. He believes that, thanks to his powers, he's finally someone of note that people will pay attention to. To this end, he plans to betray Silverman and take his own place in the world as a self-titled god of some sort. We'd argue that, across the season, Megawatt is the only actual superpowered character that can categorically be called a villain. The guy is insufferable, to say the least. Cat Hardy, Black Cat Analog. Due to the shared surname more than anything else, Cat Hardy from Spider Noir is speculated by fans to be a character similar to the Black Cat or Felicia Hardy from the comics. I gotta say though, there's nothing much beyond their surnames to connect these two characters. Allow me to elaborate though. In Spider Noir, Cat Hardy is a lounge singer who's secretly working against Silverman despite being essentially his mistress. She's in love with Flint Marko, her bodyguard, and is shown as being capable of doing almost anything to protect him, including betraying and manipulating people. She has no superpowers here, nor is she completely aligned with evil. I like to think of her as a caged songbird who's doing everything in her power to spread her wings again. Now, Black Cat, or Felicia Hardy in the comics, is a sexy feline-themed cat burglar who's very reminiscent of DC's Catwoman. In the comics, she eventually falls in love with Spider-Man, and they share a brief but ill-fated love story. Make of that what you will, but we think it's abundantly clear that these characters couldn't be more different from one another. I mean, she's kind of dangerous and she's got that femme fatale energy, but that's where the similarities end. Comics. Major Spider-Man Noir villains. The Goblin, Norman Osborne. Unlike the corporate tycoon Norman Osborne is in most Marvel continuities, the Earth 90214 version of Norman Osborne is a mob boss that runs the crime syndicate of New York City. The Green Goblin is arguably Spider-Man's most iconic villain, and he's usually portrayed as a mad genius billionaire who's obsessed with the webhead. In the Noir universe, instead of being born into the lap of luxury, Norman Osborne is a circus freak with a hideous reptilian skin disorder, which led to him having a traumatic childhood. childhood. Scarred by how society treated him, Norman would fashion himself a mask, earning himself the moniker of the Goblin, and he would soon begin recruiting people to his criminal gang. Not long after, the Goblin and his gang would draw the attention of NYC's most powerful individuals on both sides of the law, and they would use him to do their dirty work. However, eventually, he would grow so powerful that he would take over the entire city as its mob boss and run it with an iron fist. This was kind of a genius way to rewrite Norman Osborn's character into this universe because it just feels natural, considering the setting and his character's history with Spider-Man throughout the Marvel comics. I mean, Brendan Gleeson does an amazing job as Silverman in the TV show, but we still can't help but wonder what would have happened if they had gone with the Goblin instead. Vulture, Adrien Toomes. One thing that we did like about the Noir universe was the Vulture. He was an absolutely terrifying and evil character. That's because in a lot of the comics, the Vulture is kind of a jobber. For those who don't know what a jobber is, allow me to explain. A jobber is a wrestling term used to describe a wrestler who's there to get beaten up on just to make the main wrestler look good in front of the audience. The jobber always loses, and often in spectacular fashion. That's his entire MO. However, in the Spider-Man Noir universe, Adrien Toomes, aka the Vulture, might have been a carnival freak, but he's nothing to laugh at. Shunned by society due to his weird physical appearance, the Vulture amused crowds in the circus by biting the heads off live chickens in his early days. Later on, he would join Norman's gang of freaks and quickly rise to become the Goblin's right-hand man and primary enforcer. During this time, he would also develop a taste for human flesh, adding to his entire evil persona. They really made the Vulture live up to his namesake in Noir, which is terrifying to say the least. As we were saying, for most people, the mere thought of crossing the Vulture was enough to make them fall in line, but not Benjamin Parker. This World War veteran wouldn't back down from the mob or the Vulture, despite repeated threats, which finally led to him being hunted, killed, and cannibalized by this villain. I think you can understand why Spider-Man Noir has a special place of hatred for this man, and he serves as one of the main villains of the entire series, perhaps only second to the Goblin himself. Kraven the Hunter, Sergei Kravenov. I don't have much to say about Kraven the Hunter from the Earth 90214 universe because he's not a major character in it. In this universe, Kraven wasn't born as a Russian aristocrat. Instead, like the other cronies of the Goblin, he belongs to a circus where he worked as a trainer for animals. Following Norman Osborn's eventual rise in power, he would join the crime family as a hitman. This version of Kraven, who also goes by the name Sergei Kravenov, only shares his name with his other alternate versions. I say this because, unlike how his character is portrayed in other universes, this Kraven is neither honorable nor a real hunter. He's a feral man in terms of both his upbringing and fighting style, who has no qualms about the methods he uses to bring down his quarry. It's also worth noting that in this universe, Kraven the Hunter is still the half-brother of another Spider-Man villain, the Chameleon, just like in the main continuity. Kraven the Hunter doesn't have any observable superpowers as such in the Noir universe, making him more of a mobster with feral instincts, but we personally wish they had done a little bit more with this character, as we all know the potential he possesses. Sadly, they turned him into just another mildly significant lackey of the Goblin. Chameleon, Dmitry Smerdyakov. One of the key villains of the Noir universe is the Chameleon, whose real name is Dmitry Smerdyakov. Just like most of the villains we've covered here from the comics, Dmitry was also part of the freak shows from the carnival that the Goblin belonged to. Just like his half-brother, he joined Norman Osborne after the latter decided to leave the carnival in order to pursue a life of crime. The Chameleon's powers remain largely unchanged from that of his Earth 616 version. The key change to his background is that, unlike in the main universe, where he's trained to become the master of disguise and deception, inheriting the title of Chameleon, here, Dmitry's skills are honed in the circus. We're not just talking masks and wigs here either. This guy can literally rearrange his features to imitate anyone in the world. The main reason we think the Goblin keeps the Chameleon around is because he aids the boss in hiding his hideous appearance, because thanks to his skills, Chameleon's main claim to notoriety happens when he disguises himself as the chief of the Daily Bugle, J. Jonah Jameson, and murders Ben Urich, who serves as Peter's mentor. Ben had been secretly cooperating with the Goblin in exchange for drugs. However, he tries to change his ways after being confronted by Peter. This leads to him having lived out his usefulness for the Goblin, who sets out a hit on him by the Chameleon. Just like Uncle Ben's death was a massive blow for Peter, Ben Urich's death at the hands of the Chameleon firmly shapes his personality as the brutal and ruthless Spider-Man Noir. In a way, it's fair to say that through a single murder, Chameleon's impact on the entire Noir series is more massive than anybody gives him credit for. Crime Master. The Crime Master is one of the more obscure villains from Spider-Man's rogue gallery. Thing is, though, his entire shtick is that he's a mob boss, and we already have quite a few of them competing for that spot, like Silverman, Kingpin, Mr. Negative, the Owl, and a whole bunch more. This is probably the biggest reason Crime Master never really stands out from the crowd. I mean, besides his name. However, he does play a key role in Marvel Noir, where a version of him exists as well. Following the fall of Norman Osborn, a massive power vacuum is left within the criminal underworld, which leads to numerous individuals taking their shot at the top spot. The one who finally emerges as the winner of this conflict is a ruthless, sadistic, and racist individual with ties to the Nazis called the Crime Master. Along with his henchmen, the Enforcers, and the Sandman, nobody is able to stand up to him, and NYC quickly falls under his sway. In many ways, this dude is way worse than the Goblin ever was. Yeah, Osborne might have been a ruthless freak, but at least he didn't pick his targets based on the color of their skin. Crime Master literally supports Nazis and supplies African Americans as guinea pigs for Doc Ock to experiment on. This guy is a certified dirtbag who eventually realizes that he's being manipulated by forces beyond his pay grade. Honestly, we just detest this guy, which kind of shows how well written he is in the Noir comics. Sandman, Flint Sandman Marco, Noir. The Sandman from the comics is fairly similar to the one we get in the live-action TV show in terms of powers. He too can't really externally control sand or morph his body into outlandish shapes and sizes. In the comics, he can harden his body to such a degree that Spider-Man once compared it to being hit by granite. He can also loosen the sand to soften blows and tank hits, making him a formidable foe. As we mentioned while discussing the Crime Master, the Sandman is kind of reduced to a mere henchman in Marvel Noir. His primary task is to supply fresh African-American victims to Doc Ock. He's fairly unremarkable otherwise and doesn't have too much lore or story behind him in the comics. We're glad to see the live-action show actually developed him into a real character in the Noirverse. Dr. Octopus, Otto Octavius, Noir. There's an argument to be made that after the Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus is the most well-known Spider-Man villain. Whether it's comics, cartoons, or movies, he's always shown to be a credible threat to Spidey, even taking over his body and masquerading as the superior Spider-Man at one point. The Noir version of Octavius is not so flamboyant or powerful, but what he lacks in power and charisma, he more than makes up for with his twisted and sick nature. Born as a cripple in South Africa, Otto Octavius grew up harboring a deadly hatred towards the colored natives of the land, resenting their freedom, while he was confined to his wheelchair. Growing up, Octavius would become a world-renowned biologist who would conduct his day-to-day affairs using the mechanical arms attached to his wheelchair. I mean, think about it. This guy legit turned into a proper psycho, not because of his disadvantage, but purely out of spite and jealousy. He would join the Nazi Party sympathizers of the New Germany crime syndicate and begin conducting horrid experiments on African Americans, as we already mentioned. This guy is a real piece of work because he doesn't kill his victims outright. Instead, he opts to turn them into mindless slaves as he believes that genocide would be a waste. He's the one actually pulling the strings behind the Crime Master and has the latter brutally murdered after he serves his purpose. Let me tell you, this guy even manages to escape punishment and gets deported to Germany, but in an ironic twist of fate, he's rejected by the same Nazi party that he idolized due to being a cripple, as he didn't fit their version of an Ubermensch. He's then left to rot and die alone, shattered in his mind as well as his body. We don't think there could be a much more fitting end for a character like this, as death is actually a mercy Doc Ock didn't deserve. And there you have it, the full rogues gallery of every villain that's gone up against Spider-Man Noir in some form or another in both the live-action TV show and the original comics. Honestly, we feel like some of the interpretations of the villains, like the Chameleon and the Vulture, are kinda better in Earth 90214. At the very least, I think we can all agree that they're way more brutal and dark in this universe. I mean, in case you forgot, the Vulture ate Uncle Ben, and he was gonna do the same to Aunt May. The villains here are so deranged, they'd probably be at home in Batman's rogues gallery at this point. That said, who's your favorite villain in the Spider Noir universe? Let us know in the comments down below, but for now, we hope to see you soon in the next one. Until then, stay safe and stay marvelous.